Thanks for attending today. My name is Ben and I'm from University Centre Peterborough. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Alex Delves. My kind of job role is Head of Academy Performance Analysis, and I work at Sheffield United Football Club.
What sector is your company based in?
So it's professional football, so we would come under a private sector.
Tell us what your company does.
Yeah, so kind of as I mentioned there, we're a professional football club. So that's not kind of just limited to football on the pitch. That includes the academy, so developing young players. It includes the commercial side of that, so all of the business aspects. It includes the community foundation, which is important for educating a lot of young people in the footprint of the city, along with being part of a bigger kind of global company that's involved with a number of football clubs across the world now.
Does it supply to a regional, national or global market?
Yeah, so all of the above really. So regionally, obviously we supply various aspects of the business to people in the kind of the local footprint of Bramall Lane and Sheffield, whether that be, again, football fans coming from the local area or whether that's young people going to the club for education, like I mentioned, through the foundation. Regionally, obviously we've ticked that off, but after that, kind of nationally, you're talking about professional football, so it's obviously on a national scale. But then kind of globally, you're trying to enter professional football as a global business brand. And as I mentioned, it's part of an organisation that's got football clubs now dotted in various places across the world. We also own a club in Belgium. So you're talking about a business that's not just within the UK, it's kind of growing across the world from a performance point of view, but also commercially.
And how many people work within the company?
I'm not too sure about the company as a whole. Within kind of my area, which is specifically the academy, you're thinking kind of the various aspects with coaches, performance staff, various other people. You're looking at 30, 40 kind of full-time members of staff within that aspect.
And what makes your company stand out to your customers or clients?
I think from a historical point of view, it's quite a historical brand. It's one of the football clubs that was really early established, a really old-fashioned traditional club, one of the first and oldest stadiums in the country. So it's a football club that's got a lot of heritage, and I think there's various kind of elements of performance and things that you can look at. Sheffield United, they scored the first ever Premier League goal, so it's a name that's kind of synonymous with football.
Does your business have multiple office locations?
Yes, so kind of just on the local football side of things. So we've got our training ground in Shirecliffe, and then we've got our obviously football stadium, and then we've also got other areas that the community work out of.
What recent environmental changes has your company made or plans to make?
I'm sure there's a lot more than what I'm aware of, but even little things that they've tried to make a difference with being more sustainable. So trying to print less, trying to travel a lot less, but where travel is needed, there's kind of electric pool cars. So there's plenty of initiatives going on, just trying to reduce carbon footprint and be a bit more sustainable.
And what do you do?
Yeah, so my role, as I mentioned, I work for the academy and I'm a performance analyst. So one of the key things that's involved in my job role is helping young players and coaches to try and develop and ultimately have a career as professional footballers. So I'll be supporting them with their kind of tactical development, helping them understand the game, helping them look at how they performed in training and games and see what improvements we can put in place to try and help them to, like I say, ultimately have a career as professional footballers.
How long have you been doing it?
So I have probably had about 10 years worth of full-time experience in that industry within football and high performance sport. And then a few years before that as an intern while I was still at university as well. So quite a few years now, really.
How did you get involved in it?
So my journey into kind of professional football started when I was at university. So I had an opportunity as a second year student to get involved with a partnership that the university I was at had with Derby County Football Club. Through that, I was able to obviously experience professional football behind the scenes, get some work experience, and it worked really well alongside my degree, learning about the same things that I was going out and having work experience in. And it just made it really clear to me that that was a potential career path for me. And the more I experienced it, the more I really enjoyed it. And then from there, graduated university, looked to get more work experience in the industry, did that alongside getting a master's degree. And then just constantly applying for jobs. Unfortunately enough, was able to secure a full-time role after I completed my master's degree.
What kind of projects are you working on right now?
So we've got lots of kind of projects that we work on a kind of daily, weekly basis. But in terms of kind of longer term projects over the course of the season, we're looking at things like talent identification and recruitment. We're looking at assessing kind of our football philosophy, if you like, to see if what we're able to do from a coaching point of view actually then comes out of players' performance. We're looking at we've got a partnership with Harvard University at the moment where we're doing a lot of data. So we're looking to try and marry up our physical data from our GPS units against our technical and tactical data to see if there's a link between the amount of volume of work and high intensity work that you do in games with match outcomes. So do you win more games or lose more games when you have high or low physical performance? So there's plenty of kind of research projects, both football specific and kind of performance specific, going on behind the scenes that we're all involved in.
What are your favourite parts of the job?
I think one of the aspects of the job that's really fulfilling is helping people kind of follow their dreams. So in an ideal world, you might have a young lad who joins you as an under-9. They progress all the way through to get a professional contract as a scholar, and then a professional contract at 18. So if you can kind of have an impact on that young person during the course of their journey and see them, like I say, kind of fulfill their potential and become a professional footballer, it's very fulfilling. And then some of the other things that people enjoy is just kind of the general parts of the job, like going and seeing new football stadiums and training grounds, and meeting new people and seeing what kind of other clubs are doing. So it's a really varied kind of job, but there's plenty of kind of good, enjoyable aspects of it.
What do you think are the skills needed for your job?
I think some of the most important things with the job are being able to communicate with people. I think with my job specifically, you're constantly talking to people, whether it's building relationships with coaches, whether it's talking to players, whether it's communicating information to either one of those. So kind of being able to listen, to take information on board, to then maybe tailor that information to the person that you're speaking to, whether it's a really experienced coach, whether it's a really young player at two extreme ends, or whether it's kind of someone in the middle, a young person. Can you tailor the way that you talk to a young person to really best get that information across to them? Obviously, too much detail and they're not going to understand it. Too little detail and they're going to feel a bit patronized. So it's about really understanding who you're talking to and trying to tailor your kind of communication to them, being really clear in the words that you use and how you kind of articulate those messages.
And how do you network?
Lots of different ways. So obviously one of the big ones, I'm sure for many industries, is kind of LinkedIn. So there's a big kind of performance analysis network on LinkedIn. So if you needed to get in contact with someone who works at a football club, you could obviously search for that football club and see who's doing the role there. What kind of happens a lot in practice as well is you network with people through going to games and building relationships with other people, meeting other members of staff from the other teams when you're at games, talking to them, obviously getting to know them and their journeys and what they do within their kind of working roles and see if that's similar or different to you. There's other areas, so depending on what kind of level you're working at, you might then be involved and invited to kind of various meetings and CPD sessions. So one of my recent networking experiences before the pandemic was to go down to London for a Premier League meeting at their headquarters and meet all of the other analysts from kind of Premier League clubs in doing my role. So yeah, various kind of different methods, whether it's kind of online through something like LinkedIn, whether it's WhatsApp groups, or whether it's kind of in person, just meeting people when you're kind of out and about doing your job.
And what changes have you seen in your sector in the last 5 years?
I think one of the biggest changes within my role is just the volume of the improving technology. So you're able now to kind of capture footage and film footage without physically being there, whether that's through kind of IP cameras or kind of remote cameras that you can set up on the side of the pitch that will kind of automatically do some of those areas of your job for you. You're able to kind of gather a lot more data now, whether that's doing it kind of yourself or the emergence of lots of different companies like Opta and Stats and StatsBomb, Instat, who provide kind of third-party data. If you submit your video to them, they'll look at it and generate lots of data for you. So probably the advancement in technology is one of the biggest things that's kind of evolved my role within football.
And what are the developing opportunities for your sector?
Yeah, so football again specifically with performance analysis, what you're seeing now is various different strands and pathways developing. So whereas before you might have just been an analyst where you're involved in kind of generating data, looking at footage, doing pre-match, doing post-match, each one of those areas now has probably got a dedicated member of staff. So you could be a match day analyst where you're looking at kind of your pre-match, who are you going to play in the next game, what are their strengths and weaknesses, how are you going to counteract those, how are you going to enhance your strengths against their weaknesses, and then obviously reviewing that after the game. And then on the other side, now you've also got people who might do technical analysis, so really looking at stats and data and trying to look at performance profiling and benchmarking and be predictive. And then you've also got people who are involved in technical scouting and recruitment, so gathering data and video on players from all around the world and trying to be really objective in the players that you're suggesting the team that you work for should be scouting and looking at with the potential to sign. So there's lots of now different aspects and avenues that you can go into as an analyst. So you might not be the strongest match analyst, but you could be a really strong data analyst, or you could be a really strong recruitment analyst. So there's various different pathways to get involved in.
And what are the developing pressures for your sector?
The biggest pressure is probably not really developing pressure, but the biggest pressure is kind of always just the scheduling and the demands of time. As you've seen with kind of football this season, the amount of fixtures and the volume of fixtures you're having to kind of deal with on a weekly basis. Sometimes you might end up having 2 or 3 games. So whereas it was already quite time demanding, it's even worse now. So you're having even less time to really try and put your normal practices into place. So that would kind of be one of the still developing, but the constant demand almost of the role.
And what organisations or professional bodies represent your sector?
So with my career path specifically, you have some kind of bodies. So obviously you'll have the FA. So, you know, to want to work in football, you're going to have to be kind of part of a licensed coaches club. Obviously that's kind of specific to coaches, but it's also very relevant for an analyst like myself. I think one of the things that a lot of people will recommend as an analyst is to really go and get your coaching badges so that you can really understand the technical and tactical detail of football. You've also then got kind of specific bodies. So there's one called the International Society of Performance Analysis for Sport. So through that, you can become accredited as an analyst. And then that's always a good thing to hold. And it's something that some clubs and some job descriptions will require you to have, or certainly it will look good if you do have that.
What skills does your company or department most value in your employees, and why?
I think within football in general, but specifically our role, is you've got to be willing to work hard. You've got to be dedicated to the job, and you've got to be really enthusiastic about it as well. So the reason I kind of say that is particularly with the, being kind of dedicated, is you're going to have to at times work very hard and work very long hours, and sometimes those hours are going to be unsociable. There's going to be a lot of times when maybe you're kind of stuck on a bus traveling to games, and that isn't for everyone, but the kind of rewards that you get from that outweigh the negatives of sometimes it having an impact on maybe your personal or your social life. But certainly one of the things that you've got to be willing to do is to put that time in and to put that hard work in, work under pressure, work to time commitments. And like I said, enthusiasm, because you've got to constantly be willing to do it, but be willing to do it with that kind of joy and enthusiasm and love for the job. Because I think the moment you lose that, people start to see through that, and then that really kind of rubs off on the people around you. And it's one of those industries where you've got to kind of constantly be that enthusiastic, positive person to try and help everyone else around you do the job to the best of their abilities as well.
What are your company's or department's top 3 interview questions, and what are you looking for in the answers?
Thinking about back to interviews that I've been on for roles that I've applied for or interviewed for, one of the things that we want to know is about work experience. So we think kind of qualifications are a given. So, you're not going to get an interview for a job if you don't have the required qualifications. What I really want to know is, have you kind of got work experience doing this particular job, or have you got really relevant work experience from different roles? What are the transferable skills that you've taken from those jobs that are going to be relevant to this job? How are you as a person going to meet the kind of job description? And can you kind of have examples of that? I think one of the other really important questions that would be looking to ask is also why that person's interviewed or applied for the job. What do they want to get from this job? How can they improve what we're already doing? How can we help them? How will it help them with their kind of career aspirations? What do they know about the club? All of those sorts of things. And then finally, one of the big ones for me is actually setting people a task and getting them to present back to us. So that task could be anything from watching a game of football and just presenting back about what they think the strengths and weaknesses of a team are, to something really technically and tactically specific. But I think it's really important as part of an interview to see that person doing part of the job that they're going to be coming in and doing. So obviously you can talk about it, but we really want to see some elements of your experience and your ability in practice as well.
That's great. What other roles does your company employ?
So within my position in the academy, so we have various kind of different departments. So we'll have coaches, we'll have physiotherapists, we'll have sports scientists, S&C coaches, data analysts, we'll have recruitment staff, and we'll have analysts. So plenty of different pathways and departments just within kind of the academy and within professional football.
What advice do you have for someone wanting to work in your sector?
I think the biggest advice I could give to anyone is to be really proactive now while you've got the time. If you get to the end of your degree and you've not really gone out of your way to do anything extra on top of that in terms of work experience or other qualifications or research, then you're going to find it really hard to get ahead of a pile of other people with similar qualifications. So really get in touch with people. If there's with my role, if you want to experience that, constantly look out for advertised opportunities, partnerships with the universities that you're at potentially. Get in touch with local football clubs, ask them if they're looking for any work experience staff, and just put yourselves out there. Alongside that, look to do kind of coaching qualifications and get coaching experience, whether that's even just grassroots or whether that's anything more than that, paid work at local schools, local leisure centres, local academies, or the other non-professional football clubs. Look at joining in on, there's been so many webinars and online content recently, so doing your research, joining those kind of webinars, asking questions, researching the area that you want to go into. So they're all the kind of things that I think really help someone stand out from everyone else who's coming out of university with a similar degree.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time, Alex.
No problem.